Good morning, good afternoon. Welcome to our second coffee break. This is in a series that we'll be having going forward. Today's webinar is on Weak Security Makes Hacking Easy. Truer words were never spoken. My name is Sherry Barnett, and I am one of the product marketing managers here at SolarWinds. I've been here for about 2.5 years. Prior to that, did all kinds of things. We won't go into the details, been around the block. So welcome. A couple things about today's webinar. All attendees, that's all of you, are on mute. And so if you wanted to raise your hand, we don't have a way of hearing your audio. So that means use the question window to ask questions, and we would love you to ask questions. And go ahead and do it as we go along. And I'll either look at your question and pop it in and ask Eric while we're moving along here, or we can save it up till the end, and we'll leave a little bit of time at the end to answer those. Let us know if you have any audio video issues, and this session is being recorded, and we will send you a link to the recording. So if you have other coworkers or friends or whoever who are dying to see this, you can share it with them. So today, Eric will be, who I'll be introducing in just a second, will be setting the stage about what's happening in the security world today. As we know, it's a constantly moving thing. And then he will be offering you guys 3 quick tips on ways that you can improve your security. And then we'll answer any questions that you guys have that we didn't answer during the course of the webinar. We do have 3 polls, so stand by to make your responses to our polls, just because I think it makes it interesting for everybody to see what everybody else is doing in the way of security. So hang tight on that. And without further ado, I would like to introduce today's speaker, Eric Anthony. Eric Anthony has been in this industry for a long, long time. He opened his first break fix business in 1992. He had his own MSP that he started in 2007. And he's been here at SolarWinds as one of our main industry experts for 6 years now. He's also on the executive council for managed services at CompTIA, and is definitely my go-to guy when I have questions about the business that you all are in and the industry in general. So without further ado, Eric, take it away.
Thanks, Sherry. Yeah, and all of that to say, I've just been doing this a really, really long time. In fact, I think I can actually go back to somewhere around 1985 or 1986 to say was the first time I actually took money for helping somebody with their computer. So anyway, yeah, we're going to be presenting some great information on security today and some of the things that you can do to not only get your MSP or your IT service provider business more aligned and you get your house in order, like we'll talk about, but also for your clients as well. So the challenge that we're going to pose is how weak security protocols make hacking easy, because one of the things we don't want to do is we don't want to make it easy for these hackers, these malicious actors, to get into ourselves or our clients, because we represent a big footprint into a lot of different clients. One of the biggest challenges that face MSPs today is the ever-changing landscape. And we see this all the time because we're seeing all these new tools come out that we're now having to adopt in the industry to manage all of the different threats that are now coming after us and our customers. So how do we battle that? Well, first of all, we need to keep our security practices up to date. Now, this does, mean that we have to read industry trade papers. We need to keep abreast of the things that are going on in the industry. But in addition to us learning those things, we also need to make sure that we are training our staff and training our customers on these security awareness topics, because if we don't, there's going to be a lapse somewhere in the chain. And one of the major problems with the threats today is how much they depend on social engineering to gain a foothold in our systems and in the systems of our customers. So then we're also going to talk about how to take measures to protect your customers' passwords, because if social engineering is one of the biggest ways that malicious actors get into our systems, it's usually because of either weak passwords or those passwords being placed in an area where they're, easily accessible, or which is probably the worst, is the reuse of passwords. So the big question of the day, is your house in order? So
And with that, let's go to our first poll question.
sounds good to me.
So, do you perform staff security trainings? Let us know. This is an interesting one. And hopefully you're doing your homework as well. And most likely your staff may be, reading blogs, reading articles, reading, and what's happening in forums. But there's nothing that really replaces just plain old security trainings. So how are we doing here? Aha.
Well, there's your answer there,
There we
Sherry.
go. A lot of rarelies. And good on you that do it regularly. That's great. And some of you are doing what? 30% of you are doing it as part of your routine operations. Excellent. So for those of you who are doing it rarely, we have a few tips for you.
Yeah, I think it's interesting how we're seeing it. That 30% number is actually pretty interesting, because we are seeing a shift. We're seeing a focus of our MSP customers actually moving more towards a security focus, and not only for themselves, but also for their clients as well.
Yeah, good deal.
All right, so how easy is it to hack an MSP? Um, well, lately, if you've watched the news, it's pretty darn easy. And this is one of the problems that our industry is having right now. So, it's been in the news quite a bit. So just since November of last year, we've seen a coordinated cyber attack against 20 Texas municipalities. I mean, these are places that run police, fire, water, utilities, things like that. So, big infrastructure problems here. Access to electronic files blocked for 400 dental practices. That was a huge one. A police department in a Texas town actually had to stop operations because the attackers reset everybody's password. That seems like something that's pretty, non-violent, but when it comes to a critical service like a police department, if they can't get in to do searches for, license plates and for criminal background checks, it is seriously going to affect, how that town is secured. So some of the things that happened here in terms of how, there was a vulnerability in the cybersecurity at the MSP that handled the software updates for things like firewalls and backups. One MSP even had to pay $2 million in Bitcoin to unlock the file of all of its clients. Now, I don't know about you, but when I was running my MSP, I didn't have an extra $2 million laying around. And I'm not even sure that a cybersecurity policy is going to help much in this case. Or if it does, it's certainly still going to be really damaging, not only to the client's reputation, but also to yours as well. And that's one of the things that I really want to point out today. And this is something that we're really starting to see emerge in the industry, is that customers believe that this cybersecurity is your responsibility. So even if you don't think you have a risk, even if you've written, outs into your contracts, your customers are still going to believe that the risk lies with you. And that perception, even though you may be able to prove it in a court of law, their perception is still that it's your risk and therefore your responsibility. So one of the things that has changed so much is now that there's so much financial gain for these attackers, it really has turned into a problem of financial risk to the MSP. It's not just a data risk anymore. And of course, data, last layer of defense should always be backup, but it's a risk of financially, possibly losing your business because of an incident like this.
Yeah, it's funny because when we talk to MSPs, we ask them how they found most of their customers, and a lot of them say it's word of mouth. Unfortunately, that can work the other way too. If you've got a problem with one of your customers and that gets around, your reputation is at risk. So it behooves you to not only keep yourself, of course, as squeaky clean and secure as possible, but to make sure that your clients are, and that's kind of what we're talking about today.
Right. And by the way, it's not all doom and gloom. Okay. It's, we talk about it like it kind of is. We just did, right? But for the MSP who actually does have their house in order and it's doing the right things, this is actually an opportunity for them because now they're prepared to step in where another IT service provider failed and take over that customer.
And kind of be the hero. Exactly. So on to quick tip number 1.
All right. So our quick tip number 1, I don't know why I can't say that. I had a problem during the
it's hard
first one
to
too.
say, yeah.
Is assessing your security protocols. And what we mean by security protocols here is we mean your processes and procedures. Um, and so we talked about how the security landscape is changing. So the question really is, how are you equipped to not only face the changes that have already happened, but also incorporate new changes as they come about? So bad guys are evolving their techniques, and that means that you need to be learning about this stuff all the time. You need to stay up to date on all of the new security threats that are coming out on pretty much a daily basis. We need to make sure that we're just getting rid of weak and reused business email passwords. And the problem here is, especially with email passwords, and that's why we picked this one out specifically, is once they have an employee's email password, that's the keys to the kingdom, because all the password resets and everything else for all of the other systems that they have to log into are all keyed into that email account. And so if the threat actor has access to the email account, they can pretty much get access to any of the other systems as well. And then, of course, employee turnover. It's very important to keep track of the employees at your clients as well as in your own business, because those can lead to security risks as well. The statistics actually show us that I think it's up to 50% of former employees actually use credentials to go back into a system from an employer that they no longer work for. That's a pretty high number. So we want to make sure that we're curtailing that and limiting that as much as possible. So what are some of the solutions? Well, first of all, we want to know your customers and your employees and the risks they face. So a lot of this has to do with knowing all of the systems that your customers' employees have access to, as well as your own employees. It's very important to know where all the risk factors are to make sure that you know which passwords need to be changed or which accounts need to be removed when an employee is fired, things like that. You need to focus on risk, not security. You need to find out where all of the risks are. Like I just talked about risk factors, right? So risk in terms of security is really the problem, because it's the effect of what happens when there's a security breach, not the fact that the security breach actually happened, because you're never going to eliminate it completely. So you just want to try and minimize the risk as much as possible, and that's where these solutions come into play. And then, of course, you want to implement good password practices. That goes back up to the weak and reused business passwords up above. It's really important that you do password rotation and you do strong passwords.
And unique, strong passwords, yeah.
Unique, strong passwords. Yes, you cannot reuse passwords.
Yep. So that actually takes us, and that whole email password takes us to our next poll question, which is, have you performed phishing training with your customers' employees and or your own MSP employees? What's the success rate? And here I go with my phishing story. So this is real. Like, you always hear about phishing and you wonder, like, you hear about these elderly people who get phished with these emails, and gosh, how could they do that? Oh my goodness. Well, my last employer, the payroll gal, got an email from the CEO one morning requesting all of the W-2s for all employees for the previous 3 years. So she sent them over. She wasn't sure why, but she figured, okay, the CEO is asking me, I'm going to send them all over. So she did. Well, of course, it was not from the CEO. It was from someone spear phishing. And so as a result, not only the employees that were currently still working for the firm, but employees who were no longer even with the firm suddenly were getting loans taken out in their names, credit cards taken out in their names, and the company was responsible for LifeLock subscriptions for all of us for a couple of years, but the fact that we also, it took us an enormous amount of time to wade through what was going on with our identity theft and what was happening was just a lack of productivity, a lot of money out of pocket, and frankly, it was just a giant pain. So this stuff's real, even though, you may be a professional and you think you're just getting, an email. Maybe should have been a little more wary of that one, but this stuff happens. It happened to me. So,
Yeah, so these numbers are pretty interesting. They're actually a little bit encouraging, especially that first one. I know when we've asked this question in the past, we've actually had people say, yes, I did a phishing test, and yes, 100% of them, answered the email or clicked on the link. And we're not seeing that anymore, which is good,
hmm
because there's so many of these phishing emails going out every day. There are days when I go into my spam folder purposefully so I can look to see how many I've received in a day, and it's easily 5 to 7,
yep,
easily 5 to 7. Um, so this is something that they are mass attacking our users to try and gain access. So yes, over 50%. Yeah, it'd be nice to get that number down a little bit. And yes, under 50%, that's really good that we're up to 25% there. And then obviously no is they weren't testing at all, which if you are in the MSP space and you're doing everything you can to protect your customers, really phishing training and testing is one of the things that you really need to start looking at doing, because it is so important to solve the social engineering factor of the risk.
yep. And that takes us to quick tip number 2.
All right, quick tip number 2. I got it right that time. Help customers understand the risk. So really this is about having conversations with your customers. This is about teaching them what types of risks are out there and what you're capable of protecting them against, and what they have to do to their internal resources, AKA the humans inside their building, that they have to do to make sure that they're not, exposing themselves to that kind of risk. You want to introduce them to dark web scanning tools. There is no better way to scare a business owner than to show them how many of their passwords are already online. And that's pretty easy to do. And then educate them on why password management is so important. Because those dark web scanning tools are going to show them that they have credentials that are already out there. And so if they use the same password for LinkedIn that they use to log into their QuickBooks Online, they have a problem. And those passwords need to be changed. They need to be unique because they can be easily exploited. Now, if we look at the statistics over to the right there, we start off with 43% of all cyber attacks are aimed at small businesses. That means that the primary customer of the IT service provider or the MSP is at risk for, being attacked by these malicious actors. Another statistic, 81% of company data breaches are due to bad passwords or poor passwords. So these are, that's the number one vector because it's 81%, right? So 81% means the highest probability of a data breach is going to be because of a password exploitation. And then probably the most numbing of all the statistics that I've seen around cybersecurity and small business is that 60%, that's more than half of all small companies that have a cyber attack like this go out of business within 6 months. That is just because most IT service providers and MSPs fall in that category too, by the way. And if you have a breach, it's going to affect other companies, which is just going to multiply the problem. So there really is a reason a business reason to be protecting yourself and your clients from these types of cyber attacks.
Yep, yep. I just wanted to mention that clarify the types of hacking. It's interesting that a lot of people don't understand how clever some of these are. And for you to actually educate your customers about the different ways that they can actually infiltrate, whether it's a brute force attack or a keylogger attack or hijacking utilities. There's all kinds of things that they can do. And just explaining to them what all of these things are, I think can be very useful, because you hear about bad actors and hacking and this is and that, but getting more specific so that people are aware of what they read in the news and stuff like that, I think can, get them thinking about, all right, maybe I really ought to use stronger passwords. Maybe I really ought to be much more careful because they have a better understanding rather than it just being a generality. So, and that takes us to our last poll question, which is, how confident are you that your customers are not using the same password across online accounts, all of your line of business accounts? So yeah, this is, and I have to say, I'm pretty guilty of this one. I mean, what is the average number of accounts that most people have? 85, something like
Yeah,
that
it
in
was
business?
the number was
Yeah,
85.
yeah, it's high, and I'm sure most of you have a ton of accounts as well. And it's just so easy to use the same password over and over and over again because you don't have to try to memorize it. Well, the only way to get around that, because nobody can remember 85 different strong passwords, is to use a password management system. And that's what we're going to talk about a little bit. So the poll results are in. Ooh, not confident at all. So this is pretty much exactly what we've been seeing. We've asked this question many times with other customers, and not confident at all has always come out as the highest answer for all. And very confident, good. That means you're probably doing some great training, and that's excellent. So yeah, okay,
Yeah,
here we
so
go.
so that 55% number means not only do they not know,
Hmm.
but they are pretty sure that their customers are reusing
Yeah,
passwords.
right.
And so that is something that you definitely want to address with your customers, because otherwise, access to LinkedIn leads to access to QuickBooks Online, leads directly to their bank accounts.
Yep, yep. So let's get to quick tip number 3.
All right, quick tip number 3, protect customers from credential theft. So this is, now we're talking about tools to protect the actual passwords themselves so that, you know, the bad actors can't get at the passwords, or even if they do get at the passwords, they're only good for a limited time. So first of all, audited privileged access control. Making sure that customers are accountable so that you can check these things and know who has access to what. Strong password generation, making sure that they have a tool that's going to allow them to generate strong passwords easily. Because you know what? They're not going to generate them on their own, you know, without a tool. It's just not going to happen. And then password change automation. This is much easier if it happens on a regular basis. So if you enforce password change automation, you're going to have a much greater success at, passwords actually being changed on the frequency that they're supposed to be. And then of course, having a zero trust model. Now, the win for the MSP is helping reduce liability risks, which we talked about that in detail. Risk is the number one thing you are trying to eliminate here. You'll never eliminate it completely, but you can minimize it greatly by following some of these practices. And then of course, because we're talking about automating a lot of these things with a tool, we're actually saving lots of time.
Hmm.
And there's several things that you can add on to Passportal to make things more efficient.
Yeah.
Right, Sherry?
Yeah, I mean, not only is Passportal a great way to make sure that your passwords are strong and safe and rotated regularly, but you can actually extend that service to your customers. There's another add-on service called Site, where you can essentially provide Passportal password management to your customers and share share passwords very securely with them, and actually, be a part of, make sure that they're password security is happening. And that reduces your own risk while giving them a much more secure way to handle their passwords. And honestly, it saves them a ton of time. They don't have to be searching for passwords. They just automatically inject them when they open up an application, just like you would. The other tool that you can purchase along with Passportal that's pretty cool is called Blink. And it's a mobile application that the end users actually download to their Android or iPhone. And it allows them to reset passwords by themselves. So if they manage to lock themselves out because they forgot a password, they can reset it all by themselves without, calling you or putting in a support request or whatever it may take. And they can do that 24/7, and it saves you a ton of reset password time, or password reset time, which I know is a huge percentage of the tickets that you guys often get. So just believe me, for the cost of Blink, and you look at the number of tickets that you're avoiding by doing that, it's really well worth it. So
Yeah, just two quick things on that.
mhm.
Number one, with Blink, uh, a lot of you guys know I'm really big on automation, especially right now. We're big into the automation boot camps and everything. And so one of the things that we've looked at is the types of tickets that MSPs get on a regular basis. And almost every time we look at an MSP, password resets are right up there in the top 5. So if you can automate that, obviously you're taking a lot of work off of your help desk. And that's number one. Number two is with Site, it's a revenue generator for you as well. So think of it in those terms.
Yep. So we are actually running out of time here. We whipped through a half an hour pretty quickly. If any of you are interested in Passportal, this is the advertisement part of the webinar. I hope the rest was useful too. But let us know. Either type demo into the question panel, or just visit our website and take a look at, you can go to passportalmsp.com, or you can actually go to the SolarWinds site, take your choice, and Passportal is there, and just check it out. You can trial it for free and just see if it could work for you, because it really is a great way it's a great insurance policy, and it'll save you a lot of time, and is a terrific thing to extend to your customers too. So why
Yep.
not?
And if email is your thing, of course, you can email us at info@passportalmsp.com.
Yep. All right, everybody, we're right at 2:30. So thank you all for attending. Really appreciate
Oh,
it.
we do have
Oh,
one question, Sherry, that I do want to get to, although I don't have a great answer for it, is
oh
where can
yeah.
we get info on the tools for dark web scanning? Just search the internet. There are several websites that are known, and you can go in and you can look at those to see if your credentials or the credentials of your clients have been compromised.
Yep. I actually ran across a blog where the guy was listed a ton of the top. I mean, it went on and on and on and on and on, but it was a ton of the top passwords that are on the dark web right now, and it was fascinating, I have to say. So, all right, everybody, have a great rest of your day, and thank you so much for attending.